Hello, and welcome to this video on one of the most common New Year's resolutions, dieting. More specifically, fad dieting to detox the body. Fad diets exist in all manner of variations: lemons, raw food, juice, fasting, and more. These claim to remove toxins, heavy metals, inflammation, and more. The list of benefits in many cases is just a long record of symptoms and diagnoses, without any explanation of the mechanisms, means, or evidence. They often rely heavily on anecdotes. The Huffington Post demonstrates this with their half-hearted puff piece. Many of these same diet providers sell or solicit for third-party goods. The most pronounced of these is GOOP. So let's take a look at these detox diets with GOOP as the primary example. GOOP demonstrates the appeal of this, and it is linked below. It also demonstrates the hilarious and disturbing misconceptions behind these fad diets. Detoxing is claimed to address the inflammatory properties of food, remove food allergens, lighten your diet, build mineral reserves, support liver detoxification, maintain consistent energy levels, restore the body's natural ability to heal, restore optimal function. The claims of detoxing have gradually been moved from this will remove toxins independent of bodily functions to a claim that this will help the body do its own healing and detoxification. This is done by the use of 2 liquid meals and a 3rd solid meal in GOOP's plan, and the claim is made that by replacing solid food with liquid, it will free up bodily functions and energy for recovery and rejuvenation. This entire ridiculous idea is perhaps exemplified in the most pure and simple way by this quote. You can see the screenshot now. To begin the quote, "The human body is made of trillions of molecules constantly reacting to each other in the chemistry of life. All these molecules go exactly where they need to go. An invisible intelligence is always there, trying to direct these molecules in the right direction. There are 2 basic reasons why things go wrong at this level. 1. Obstacles that interfere with molecules that are moving, toxins. 2. The absence of one or more types of molecules, nutrients, needed for a chemical reaction on which normal function depends, nutrient depletions." End quote. This is purportedly a detox program to treat the chronic symptoms of an unstated condition plaguing life. Do they mean life? This nebulous condition is said to overtax the body and create the symptoms of allergies, headaches, depression, irritable bowel syndrome, fatigue, weight gain, insomnia, and more. Strangely, these are also the symptoms observed when trying to pay off an incredibly large credit card debt after purchasing exorbitantly expensive pseudoscientific crap. That could just be a coincidence, though. The program specified here is said to remove health obstacles, restore nutrients, and facilitate the body's healing capabilities. The author talks about their experience with other pseudoscience in the form of chiropractors, traditional Chinese medicine, and more, and how they failed to treat the problems they had. Since those forms of placebo failed, why does the author put credence to their imaginary treatment? Is it personal bias or outright mercantile marketing? The anecdotes just continue, but with this particular quote standing out. To begin, the more technologically advanced we became, the sicker we got. It didn't make sense that everybody was sick and on medications. End quote. This is just untrue. The more advanced we get, the better medicine becomes, hence the author's previous job as a cardiac specialist, something that is only possible through technological advancement. More than that is the role of preventative medicine, like vaccines. Without these advancements, diseases come back, and denying them is how polio returns. Do you want polio? Somehow they link global warming to the toxicity that these detoxes remove. Supposedly, these global toxins cause global warming, the same toxins in the air, water, environment, and food, the same toxins which overwhelm the body's organs. This list of toxins even includes MSG and fluoride, the ethereal evil of all conspiracy theorists. What is surprising was to not find vaccines linked into this article as yet another toxin. All of these are supposedly powered by an invisible force. Toxins stop this force from functioning, and This leads to chemical reactions in the body that are bad. The program is broken down into 4 parts of relevance here. The first are liquid meals to reduce digestive load and allow the detox to occur in full mode. 2. To protect from circulating toxins and somehow disable a toxin-releasing signal. 3. Delivery of liver-specific detox nutrients. And 4. Promote gut repair. It also included these helpful hints. Removing, among other things, red meat from your diet, removing bad bacteria from your gastrointestinal tract with herbal antibacterials, antimicrobials like garlic and cayenne pepper. Consume nutrient-rich foods, ironically the most potent of which is red meat. Consume supplements like B group vitamins, and engage in leisure activities like massages and saunas. Let's break these claims and others down into reasonable bite-sized amounts of madness and ignorance. First of all, it is not an invisible force. This is basic chemistry, biology, and a fraction of physics. Something the author ought to be familiar with given their background. Each of these is visible either directly or vicariously thanks to modern technology, science, and medicine. These forces are identified, known, and understood. They are the proposed bad chemical reactions, although it should be said that there is no such thing as a bad chemical reaction or chemical, only unintended and undesirable. To understand why, let's go to basics and get an example. Carbon dioxide is a waste product of the body, specifically the respiratory system. It exists in the lungs regardless of how much breathing is done and how much oxygen is in the ambient environment. Although only a small part, along with nitrogen, it keeps the lung alveoli open. Conversely, there is oxygen, which is seen as the good chemical, but it needs to be kept at a low concentration. Exceeding a certain threshold leads to brain and other tissues being damaged. One of those pesky chemical reactions they refer to. These same biological circumstances appear with antioxidants, some minerals, vitamins, and nutrients. As Paracelsus is claimed to have said, the dose makes the poison. The human body exists in a delicate balance of temperature, pH, chemicals, pressure, and more. Tipping the amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide leads to poisoning. There are less obvious means of tipping the balance. Vitamin A is an example. Excess antioxidants are another. The body has cellular and protein-based systems of directing essential nutrients and more. Albumin is an example of the shuttling service the human body has evolved. This and variations on the basic molecule serve to bind with and move compounds. An example being cholesterol and other lipids. These only bind with a specific target receptor because of the carrier molecule. These are stable platforms, vehicles, and receptors that prevent the quoted constant chemical reactions. These are not invisible and they are not perfect. Therefore, they do not always go where they are meant to, but the structures used and how they work minimize complications and errors. This is not part of a larger intelligence guiding the molecules, but more on that later. It is through the understanding of how and how much of these chemicals that exist in the body that medicine and nutritionists in particular can help with the body's function and healing, knowing that high cholesterol foods can lead to bowel upset and arterial plaques, or that gluten causes celiac disease, and that it is celiac disease, not the unsubstantiated gluten intolerance being referred to here. Detox dieting is consuming food as medicine, and it is not a targeted mechanism of delivery. There is a reason why medicine is given in small doses released over a long period of time. As an example, take a dose of aspirin, and this will lead to a 30-minute lag between consuming the aspirin tablet and the effect beginning to show. The first level of concentration in serum occurs at the 30-minute mark. Over the next hour, it will build up to its most potent concentration. That is the highest amount in the blood. The blood goes everywhere in the body except the brain. Therefore, everything is exposed to aspirin at some level. As said, not a targeted delivery mechanism. Over the next 6 hours, the amount of aspirin in the blood will remain relatively steady. It will then begin to decline. Following this, the amount of serum containing chemicals decreases, and it will continue to do so unless there is another dose given or there is a problem in removing it, but more on the removal of chemicals later. The same description applies to food and detoxing though. The amount of whatever chemical is being consumed in the form of food will follow a bell curve of both the delivery and the removal. This is known as the absorption and half-life. Take antioxidants as an example. Consuming one or more high antioxidant foods, like berries, will lead to a short lapse after consumption, and then the antioxidant concentration in serum will increase considerably. And then after a period of time, it will decrease once more. Transport of foreign and essential elements like lipids and nutrients is a key issue in these ridiculous detox delusions. If a combination of cells and chemicals of any composition is mixed in a neutral environment, chemicals will diffuse through the barrier of the cell eventually. The lipid bilayer of most cells makes this nearly impossible. This is owing largely to the protein composition of it. Therefore, a mechanism to work around the protein disruption is needed. This is where the earlier mentioned carrier proteins come in. Food, alcohol, and other foreign elements are broken down by acid in the stomach, move as a liquid into the small intestine, where bacteria further break down things that are indigestible to the human system. Then, the assorted nutrients, minerals, energy, and alcohol move across a permeable membrane into the blood supply, and this goes to the liver. The carrier proteins are bound to their target in the liver, small intestine, and other filtering organs. These are normally protein structures or organic molecules such as glucose or glucose derivatives. These are structured in such a way that they fit into a fairly specific receptor. This is a lock and key scenario. As a result, the transport and movement of essential nutrients and minerals is not specific. The liver releases these carriers into the bloodstream, where it remains until either breaking down or binding with the target. It is the ability to receive and access the contents of these delivery systems that is specific. Then there is a problem with the liquid meals. Liquid meals pass through the stomach and small intestine far quicker than a solid meal would. This means the available nutrients are not separated out and absorbed by the GI tract as effectively or efficiently. This directly leads to a degree of malnutrition. If not malnutrition, then hunger and a degree of starvation, depending on how long the detox is maintained. Given most meal replacement detoxes are only a 7-day process, the bigger concern is the lack of fiber. Fiber is essential in food because it allows the body to package everything into a nice, neat, fibrous mesh at the end of the gut and draw away moisture that can be used elsewhere. Where the diet does not have enough fiber, it uses liquid to expel waste. Specifically, a low-fiber diet is similar to a diet that is based on diarrhea. A major risk from this is dehydration. Another major complication in taking a liquid meal replacement is the impact it has on the microbiome of your gastrointestinal tract. The bacteria that inhabit the small intestine tend to build up over time and are largely dependent on your exposure and diet. By changing the dietary composition for an extended period, say a week, microorganisms cannot support themselves. They are often a dependent species that require certain foods to survive in large numbers. Given that many liquid meals are high in protein, it leads to a nitrogen and amino acid incompetent species proliferating. This is a problem, as the human diet is not solely dependent on these species, and they tend to be a kind that can turn pathogenic more easily. Couple this with the antimicrobials discussed later, and it leads to a devastated microbiome. Next particularly ridiculous argument is that the gut is repaired by detoxing. Examples of the claims associated with gut repair are higher rates of mucosal healing, weight gain, and decreased disease activity. The first of these is simple. Mucosal cells do not work as well on a detox because they are deprived of essential elements. Not just essential elements, but the closely associated, if not symbiotic, bacterial cells. The lack of food, the lack of fiber, and the lack of movement of the gut due to liquid food stagnates and atrophies the mucosal layer, and further deprives it of liquid, specifically water. More than that though, it is intended to secrete a layer of mucus. This soothes and protects the gastrointestinal tract from physical damage. The mucosal layer is stripped from this when liquid passes over it, as it more readily dissolves. The most important thing that needs repairing after a detox is the gastrointestinal tract's microbiome, as discussed next. Everything else is replaced in about a week, regardless of what detox you are on. The small intestine is replaced in 2 to 4 days, the stomach in 2 to 9 days, and the colon crypt cells in 3 to 4 days. The only reason to take a liquid meal is where gastrointestinal tract repair is needed for fistulas, as seen in this article, a fistula being something that you are unlikely to be detoxing to cure. Most intensive care units and emergency departments do not use detoxing as a standard protocol, and if they do, it's strongly suggested you go elsewhere for treatment. Antimicrobials, as a rule, are specific when they are a designed and produced medicine. Antimicrobials are non-selective, and especially if they are derived from food. Something that seems to have escaped the detox planner here is the necessity for microbes in the human gut. Many of these break down and make accessible nutrients, minerals, and vitamins that are not within the gamut of human digestive ability. For example, omega fatty acids and B group vitamins. Such antimicrobials of the kind they advise are non-selective, and as a result, bad. Taking food is likely to favor one type of bacteria over another, but will also destroy them all to some extent, being a non-selective antimicrobial. Prescribed medicines work on a particular facet of the bacterial cell wall, more often than not. As a result of this, it can often work against one class or one type of bacteria extremely well, and leave the others less impaired. This means that the body has fewer processes interrupted and less disruption to the microbiome. What they suggest is much like carpet bombing the entirety of a gastrointestinal tract and hoping that whatever remains will function afterwards. Next are the liver-specific nutrients. The liver has almost no required nutritional needs. It does need some vitamin K. This is a small amount given the highly efficient recovery and recycling mechanisms the human body, and particularly the liver, has. The need for extra, non-dietary or specific diet vitamin K is incredibly tiny. The only other supporting substance the liver needs is glucose, and this is part of a normal diet. Therefore, the liver needs no liver-specific support. The liver itself stores a large amount of mineral and vitamin content. By providing supporting nutrients, it can actually create toxicity in the liver. Excess iron can build up, as can other vitamins and minerals. Obstacles to chemical movement. If you were generous, this could be easily summarized as competitive inhibition of molecules. In other words, something getting in the way of another, thereby preventing activities. The key here is competition. Very few things are competitive in the human body. This owes to the specificity of the receptors and transport mechanisms. The exceptions are enzymes, protein channels, receptors, and some pressure-dependent systems like the kidneys and lungs. The reason why only these areas are vulnerable is because they need to be put in an environment where they can be accessed by a lot of the substrate, or they're exposed to a lot of other factors. So, to simplify it, enzymes are often kept in very specific and limited regions, like the mitochondria. The relevant substrates are shuttled to it via protein chaperones and gateways. These limit what gains access to the enzymes. Then these same enzymes have specific shapes. Only the right molecule can fit in. But evolution has gone one step further. The enzymes often need cofactors to change the shape to accept the substrate question. Essentially, a lock to close the lock. If they are extracellular enzymes, they are very specific in function and target. They will rarely, if ever, behave abnormally and tend to have a short half-life for this particular reason. Very little that a detox does will detract from the competitive inhibition of enzymes. By controlling the cofactors, the enzymes are controlled, thereby no competition. Next are protein channels and receptors. These are in strategic places: the cell's surface, organelle surfaces, and vacuoles. These control entry to enzymes and organelles. They also require conformational matching and cofactors in many cases. If not, they have secondary control mechanisms like a gradient or needing another protein channel to work. And what about pressure-dependent systems? Well, as described with both the lungs and kidneys, these are either going to be shunted in a negative direction or not affected by detoxing in any way, but they'll be discussed later. Next are the claimed absence of nutrients. Let's look at a common and recognized detox diet for this: the lemon detox diet. This is a 7-day process that has no or very little B, D, E, iron, niacin, phosphorus, selenium, fiber, or lipids in it. It would seem this detox does exactly what detoxes claim to fix, by depriving the body of essential nutrients and minerals. This is almost painful in its irony. Compared to a reasonable and moderate diet, this is grossly lacking in every aspect. These diets advise you reduce red meat, and you might wonder why. The answer is the large amount of toxins in it, those nasty antibiotics, growth hormones, and just bad karma from meat. Unfortunately for detoxes, the holes in this argument begin immediately. Most countries ban antibiotics in meat, and if it is used, it must be labelled. There are some exceptions, but they are a minority and an exception. In these cases, those that do it, it is still viable to access meat that has been treated without side effects. And next, the simplest reason is because the amount that winds up on the plate after butchering, hanging, storage, and cooking is negligible at worst and non-existent at best. More than that though, the amount of antibiotics in the meat when it is butchered itself is often minuscule, given that farmers do not want to spend a great deal of money treating an animal that could otherwise have been healthy. Growth hormone is in a similar state. It is either illegal, unused, or by the time the meat appears in front of you, the amount of growth hormone in it is minuscule to none. And finally, bad karma, or more likely the claim that red meat causes all manner of ailments by virtue of being red meat. Unfortunately, the risk is small, and it is only apparent in processed red meat. So, that's steak, pork chop, lamb leg. It is not the end of the world. And more important than that though, the human body needs many of the vitamins and minerals that meat contains. These are more accessible to the human when accessed from meat than plants. The same way an ounce of chlorophyll will not give the same amount of iron content as an ounce of meat would. Taking B group vitamins during a detox is a band-aid solution, and a poor one at that. Detoxing involves deprivation of energy sources. B group vitamins allow the body to access and use the reserves it has available. Taking B group vitamins has benefits up to a point. After this, B2, B3, B6, and B9 can all cause negative side effects. B9 masks a lack of B12, leading to neurological issues. B6 also causes neurological damage. B3 causes liver damage. B2 can create radical oxygen species, but the evidence is limited. And so the high-dose B vitamins are likely a very bad idea. There is some pseudoscientific detox programs that suggest the use of something called B17, amygdalin, or more appropriately it is known as hydrogen cyanide. B17 is not a real B group vitamin, but it is marketed as such, and given its proper name, quite clearly a bad idea. Hydrogen cyanide competes with the binding of oxygen and causes hypoxemia in tissues and organs. They advise saunas and relaxation. It is well established that stress causes the bodily functions to decline. The kidneys secrete salt-retaining hormones and glucose-releasing signals. The liver starts to produce more glycerol and less triglycerides. The brain produces more stress response hormones. It is no surprise if you take time to relax that you would feel better, more so if it is the recommended extended time frame of GOOP. This would naturally lead to lifestyle changes that are better balanced. Strangely, a better work-life balance leads people to feel better. This is like telling someone to breathe when they are suffocating. Yes, it fixes the issue, but it does not address the source of the problem. Not only is this redundant, but overly entitled and condescending. Treating chronic disease of detox diets. Let's take 3 everyday examples of detox in practice: skin irritation, gastric upset, and mental health claims. The first is simple. Either you have an allergic reaction to something, or it is a chemical irritation. The first is not treated with anything but immune system suppression, which is a massive leap, or a topical anti-inflammatory. The latter is used to reduce inflammation, swelling, and irritation. Reducing exposure will help considerably. Detoxing will not suppress the immune system, change the genetics that led to this response from the immune system, or remove the irritant from the skin. The second is a different matter. Chemical interactions are generally a sign of a strong product, and if it is causing irritation, probably being used incorrectly. Try not using the chemical burns risk product incorrectly, and you'll feel better. Detoxing will not help in this regard either. In fact, it will probably delay healing or exacerbate the problem. Gastric upset is often a sign of undiagnosed allergies, generally dairy, gluten, or nut. These can only be diagnosed by an immunologist or external testing by a lab. Detoxing will not help in this matter, as it is another immune system problem. Modifying food and removing it for a short time during the detox is why you feel better, not because you have fixed the issue. Finally, mental health. Detoxing may induce a state of fugue or delirium. This would be why people feel better. It is not the same way alcohol is a depressant and sugar is a stimulant. By following a particular diet, you do not gain or lose some kind of stimulus or catalyst for mental health issues. In fact, following either the B vitamin or hydrogen cyanide suggestions may well lead to a worsening of symptoms. But maybe there's luck and there's evidence from other fields of pseudoscience. Considering everything so far, let's look at some other fields that were mentioned by the author and the placebos they used then, specifically acupuncture and naturopathy. These two take the most relevant aspects of detoxing and have at least some scientific studies surrounding their use. Chiropractic would be examined as well, except that giving that field any time and effort would be shameful. Acupuncture is another unicorn of alternative therapies. This is due to its long history and quasi-research nature. Therefore, it must work. However, it lacks consistent and reliable evidence. A journal article is linked below to explain just how this is so. This quote summarizes the results quite nicely. Large, multi-center clinical trials conducted in Germany and the United States consistently revealed that verum or true acupuncture and sham acupuncture treatments are no different in decreasing pain levels across multiple chronic pain disorders, migraine, tension headache, lower back pain, and osteoarthritis of the knee. If indeed sham acupuncture is no different from real acupuncture, the apparent improvement may be seen after acupuncture is merely a placebo effect. Furthermore, it shows that the idea of meridians is purely imaginary. All that remains to be discussed is whether or not the placebo effect is big enough to be useful, and whether it is ethical to prescribe placebos." End quote. As for naturopaths, any methodology that argues the more diluted a product is, the better it becomes, must either be done by an idiot or someone incredibly poor at maths. Where the exceptions of an actual product are used, it often relies on a concept of humors or like treating like. For example, more carbon dioxide would not help a suffocating person who already has an exceptional amount of carbon dioxide in their system. Even these products are required to be extremely diluted though. This is exemplified by the FDA requiring several naturopathic suppliers recall their products as they had active ingredients present. In other cases, the product is not even that declared on the label. So yes, Even the other fields that the author of the GOOP page and other authors have found do not work according to the evidence and scientific research. Global toxins and global warming are perhaps the most egregious misrepresentation in this article. It is established that carbon dioxide is a driving force in global warming. Carbon dioxide is not a toxin that builds up in the human body, and cannot do so. If it cannot build up, it cannot be expelled by detoxing. It is a known issue of several indoor heating systems. These heaters release carbon dioxide when not maintained. This leads to the suffocation of the people in proximity to it, and leads to an obvious tragic accident. Detoxing will not help these individuals. How then does the human body remove toxins, if not by the intervention of the detox practitioner? Let's begin with the liver. The liver is well adapted and designed from an evolutionary perspective. There is a combination of features that allow it to be abused on an ongoing basis. These include a large number of communal coping mechanisms and the inclusion of proximal organs like the gallbladder. The first of these is the hepatocyte. By having 6 of them, forming a plate, working around a central vein, artery and bile duct, which is collectively known as a liver sinusoid, they have access to a large amount of blood. They can put the material that needs to be put back into the blood, into the veins, and they can release the waste products into the bile duct. These cells produce copious amounts of toxin-removing compounds in the form of enzymes and conjugates. They do this via metabolic processes and controlled chemical reactions. Examples of this are cytochrome P452E1 and glucothione. The former facilitates the binding of ethanol to substrates such as glucose-derived molecules, and these are then excreted in urine. The latter is used by enzymes to bind drugs for excretion, such as ibuprofen and paracetamol. Some things do not spend long in the liver. Lipids are an example of this. They go to the bile duct and down into the gallbladder. Here, they are miscible with the lipids already present and other enzymes. These enable the secretion of bile into the small intestine to break down fats that are part of the dietary intake. This can be as much as 800 to 1,000 milliliters a day, without the assistance of any kind of detox program. Next are the kidneys. The kidneys work in a clear and simple manner when viewed from this schematic. Blood enters the kidney, and then it is separated into 2 parts: large proteins and cells, like red blood cells and immune cells. The other part is small proteins and soluble components, like water and salts. The kidneys pull out the needed minerals and salts, then the excess lost water, and finally the remaining useful salts and minerals. The remaining content then moves on to the collecting duct. All of this works on osmotic pressure. This is one of the physics aspects mentioned at the very beginning. Nothing the detoxer does will change how this works. However, consuming excess or limited salt, for instance, will. This can also damage the kidneys and cause substantial damage to other organs. By drinking large amounts of water, the body will recover less salt in the proximal and distal tubules, in order to keep more water going through the kidneys and out as urine. Excess water drains the body of its salt and mineral content. Conversely, excess salt intake leads to retention of water and high blood pressure, which can damage delicate parts of the kidney, like the glomerulus. The excreta includes small protein waste, excess salt, minerals, and other compounds that went through the filtration process, and as much water as needs to be lost in order to maintain adequate blood pressure. The next system that disposes of waste is the lungs. Too much carbon dioxide in the body dissolves in the blood and forms an acid, carbonic acid. The acid blood affects the functioning of the lungs, particularly the acid receptors, which are activated and create an unconscious high rate of breathing. This is meant to increase the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. But yet again, the body will not respond to conscious interference from the detoxer or anything they may do. This is a combination of physics and biology, neither of which are under the control of any human, except possibly Stephen Hawking. The GI tract itself also disposes of a considerable amount of waste, both that which is undigested, but also that which has been dumped back into the small intestine from the liver and other parts of the body. This is often lipids and similar protein-type compounds that cannot be disposed of through the kidneys. So then, how does detoxing assist these systems? Well, it does nothing good for the body's systems that remove foreign and toxic material. It can quite often have the opposite effect, whether by depriving the body of needed material to conjugate toxins with, placing extra burden on the body, or adding stresses. In trying to be clean, healthy, and righteous, the detoxes are doing themselves more harm than good. Ignorance is a dangerous thing because it leads to these kinds of claims. A simple quote from Klein and Kiat in 2014 summarizes the problem of both GOOP's detox and the industry as a whole. To begin the quote, "Although the detox industry is booming, there is very little clinical evidence to support the use of these diets." End quote. But then again, even the Telegraph falls for this. A national-level government research organization, the CSIRO, has debunked much of the appeal in detox diets, but very few people will ever look for or find it deliberately. The link for this is below, and for those not familiar with who they are, another link to an amusing description. The conclusion they came to is summarized by this quote, to begin. "The idea that we need a detox product to achieve overall health and aid weight loss is not supported by medical science. Healthy adults have a wonderful system for removal of waste products and toxins from the body. Our lungs, kidneys, liver, GI tract, and immune system are all primed to remove or neutralize toxic substances from the body." End quote. Then there is this quote, to begin. "Currently, very few scientific studies have investigated the effectiveness of detox diets for losing weight. According to the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetic Studies, which have shown that some commercial detox diets enhance detoxification of the body, found they are hampered by flawed methodologies and small sample sizes." End quote. If this is something the Guardian can get right, how is it that GOOP fails to grasp the fallacy of detox diets? To address the inevitable claims made in response to this, the first being, "But I felt better during or after detoxing." Well, yes, single isolated data points and anecdotes are not evidence of efficacy. Assuming that because you felt better from something does not mean it was correct. The possibility of placebo effects and more outweigh any possible evidence otherwise from an individual. More than that, was the treatment only detoxing, or were other actions taken to improve your health? More exercise, different food, food restrictions, or otherwise? These confound the claims made by detracting from the treatment, which is detoxing, and adding random variables in that could have caused you to feel better. Beyond that, depending on the detox plan, you may well feel better owing to delirium from dehydration and starvation. Next, my friend or I detoxed and we are no longer sick. Again, single isolated data points and anecdotes are not evidence of efficacy. An example of this is the Italian study from the early 20th century. It was found that rabies helped to mitigate breast cancer in some women. How this happened is anyone's guess, but they found it. They thought that if rabies helped some women, it should work with all breast cancer patients. As a result, about 20 women were given rabies. One demonstrated a delay in death. The other 19 died from rabies rather than cancer. You or your friend may be that person that gave the idea to give everyone rabies. Congratulations. If it doesn't do any harm, why not let people detox? Detoxing does many bad things to the body. Most focus on being a diuretic, laxative, or a potent antioxidant punch. The first two lead to dehydration, loss of nutrients, starvation, bowel damage, and kidney damage at the extreme end. The latter antioxidants can overwhelm the human biological system and become radical molecules themselves, the very thing the body tries to quash with antioxidants. It is a case of too much of a good thing. Isn't it good to let people attempt weight loss or healthy practice, even if it is a bad attempt? No. Having obese people suddenly stop eating does not work. Having healthy people stop eating does not work. Just consider what happens during a famine. Few people execute a healthy diet well, let alone something that claims to be more. But I have this evidence from this group advocate or practitioner. Is it peer-reviewed? Is it subject to scrutiny of any kind? Is there a decent methodology behind it? Or are there glaring flaws that would leave the empirical approach crying in a corner somewhere? If you can satisfy these questions, then you have a valid form of evidence. But evidence is not proof of validity. Therefore, there needs to be a collective body of evidence showing that detoxes function the way they claim and are an effective and efficacious method of treating things, something that at this stage is completely lacking. Please note that most of the topics covered here are deserving of their own extended video, but due to the scope of the topic and time constraints, they have been condensed into one. Couple that with the headache-inducing ignorance, and for health reasons, this will be limited to only one session of eye-opening self-flagellation at the hands of this topic. Thank you for watching, but there is always the chance that people who detox will simply write this off as another aspect of the global toxicity they seem to deride. As always, please post any comments, questions or suggestions below, and you will find the links in the description box.